Welcome back. I hope everybody had a chance to get some lunch and check on emails so that we can settle back in for the conference this afternoon. The next session is focused on food rescue and reporting, and I'm delighted to introduce our three panelists. First, our own Sonia Lashir. Many of you know Sonia from her former RPC role. A little more than 8 months ago, she transitioned to her current role so that we could place more emphasis on food rescue from our retail partners. Food rescue reduces waste and increases the amount and variety of food we can make available to our neighbors facing hunger. With Sonia today is one of our generous retail partners, Emily Trivio, Director of Corporate Outreach and Communications for Fairway. Fairway comes through for us time and time again, and we can't thank them enough for all they do for Food Bank of Iowa and you, our partners, in helping us get food to those who need it most. We also have with us Danielle Lawson, account manager with Feeding America, who serves as the liaison between prospective grocery and retail food donors and Feeding America's 200-member food banks. Danielle, thanks for being with us today. Let's discuss the challenges and opportunities associated with food rescue now.
Good afternoon. It's good to be with all of you. Thanks for coming back to hear more about Food Bank of Iowa and our partnerships here. I'm excited to talk to you about the retail donation program here at Food Bank of Iowa. I'm relatively new to my job, but I know many of you from being an RPC in both Regions 1 and 2 over my 5 years here so far. So let's go to our first slide and get started, and we'll talk a little bit about the history of food rescue at Food Bank of Iowa. Our retail donation program dates back to April of 2010 when we received our first retail donation from AE Dairy. This was also the time that our distribution center started what we called a metropolitan route around Des Moines to pick up donations at our area Walmarts and and Sam's Clubs. These donations were brought back into our distribution center and then sorted and reviewed by our volunteers for safety and put into storage, cold storage or dry storage. And then you, our local partners, would come in and shop this area and pick up extra food along with your order that you had placed. We called this agency shopping. These earliest food rescue efforts were appreciated by you, our partners in this area, and I know it's still missed by some of you today because I frequently hear from you that you want to go back to agency shopping. But it is safer that you pick up your order at the door, and instead we are trying to pair you with your local retailer. So although that was a great start to getting this desirable food to our neighbors in need, we still saw some waste here because when we picked up products like produce and dairy and brought them back here for storage, we lost valuable days as we waited for you to come in to pick up. And so there was a little bit of waste before we switched over to our agency enablement. Many of you that are out further in our region, we're also doing some food rescue on your own at this time from your local stores and your communities across our service area and adding these great products to your inventory. Now in the spring of 2017, as you may remember, we had a large renovation here at the Food Bank of Iowa. And this was the end of our agency shopping and our distribution center as we went under this major renovation. And it's really the big beginning of our agency enablement for our entire service area. Let's go to the next slide. And I want to talk about the benefits of agency-enabled rescue. So the benefits for agencies picking up at the retail store means that you're connected with that store for food rescue, that you partner with the store to receive this good food that can be beneficial to all of those who use your services in your pantry. Having you pick up directly from these retailers instead of our trucks picking them up and bringing them here, this gets the food out to your pantries, to the pantries quicker and out to your neighbors in need. This saves valuable time on these perishable items especially. So part of my job, which I'll review with you in a bit, is to meet with you at these stores to get you partnered and agree to their food rescue plan and set you up for a successful relationship with the store clerks, department managers, or store managers. Many of you know these managers as members of your community. This is a great opportunity for you to share your story of your pantry and your services that you provide to your community and how there are neighbors living with food insecurity right there in your community. This direct communication at that local level often leads to additional donations when they become available. When you know your store staff and create a relationship with them and share your information about your services, they'll think of you when there are additional products available or when something comes into the store that they can that they think will be good for your pantry. Let's go to the next slide. I'm going to talk a little bit about my role as the retail donations manager here. As Tammy said, I'm relatively new, although not new to Food Bank of Iowa. And so I'm working hard to get out to meet my stores. And in some cases, I'm meeting with you at these stores to get you connected. So my role really is to connect you with those stores for food rescue. Some of our corporate offices direct their referrals directly to me, like Emily, who you'll hear from soon. She'll call me to initiate a partnership with a Fairway store in your community. I work closely with our regional partnership coordinators, and they will help me identify pantries that are interested in food rescue in the area. And so we'll put out some calls, see who might be interested, who has the capacity to take on this great donation, and then we'll meet with the store together. And just as you're trained on food safety within your pantry or your program, we also will train for safety when we're transporting this food. We do have available equipment to help with that, the freezer blankets, the temperature guns, and so I can work with you and your volunteers to make sure that we're transporting this food safely from store back to your pantry. A great portion of my time is really spent visiting our retailers. I'm getting to know them. As you can imagine, across 55 counties, I have a lot to visit, so I'm on my way. I'm introducing myself to those managers, the produce departments, the receiving clerks, other department heads, to raise awareness to your services in your area and the Food Bank of Iowa and what we're doing together. And my goal is to encourage donations across all departments within those stores. So this also then leads to the question is, does the pantry in that area have the capacity to take on such donations? How often are you open? Can these products move quickly and safely through your pantry or program and out to our neighbors? Those are all things that we'll discuss as we start to plan to partner you with a retail agency. For those of you who are already picking up retail donations, you've been getting my reminder emails, I imagine, for the last 8 months that it's getting close to the end of the month, it's time to report your pounds, and I appreciate your diligence. These reported pounds are sent on to Feeding America. They're also sent on to our local and district managers for that retailer so that they can see the efforts of their stores. And so, for instance, at the end of April, I send out reports, and Emily gets one from me. It shows a listing of all the stores that we have paired at this time and what pounds they have donated, and it actually even divided out into different categories that we'll look at in the reporting guide soon. Recently, we've been asking you also to communicate with us as to who you are partnered with. Most of them we know. Clearly, you're reporting those in Primarius for me, but there may be other local contacts that you have that we're not aware of that have been donated maybe to you for a long time and that you just never have thought to report to us. And we ask to know that information so that if that store comes on my radar or someone else reaches out to me, I don't want to contact someone to set up a different relationship if you already have one established. I certainly don't want to disrupt that partnership. And so that's why you've maybe heard from your RPCs in our newsletters and from me that we'd like to know who you're partnered with. And then we're certainly happy to add those to your reporting so that you can get those pounds recorded for the benefit of your retailer as well. Just as a highlight, we just pulled these numbers together for the end of April. In the month of April, from all of you reporting, we rescued from retail stores over 418,000 pounds. It went directly from stores into your pantries and out to your neighbors in need. And that's pretty amazing. It's a large number, and we know the need is growing. And so these pounds and these donations are so valuable. So I've talked a little bit about the reporting and what we're asking of you. So we're going to go to the next slide, and we're going to talk about what it's like to donate. or to report your donations into Primarius. So I know that I'm speaking to our partners who are already engaged and you know how to use Primarius. And so if you do not report retail pounds yet, this will be show you how easy it is, first of all. I don't want anyone to be afraid to join into this retail food rescue because the reporting is super easy. So let's go to the next slide and I'll show you what I mean. So this is familiar to all of you. This is how you log into Primarius. So you would do the same thing, put in your numbers and hit log in, and we'll go to the next slide. So now you have a new button. That blue arrow is pointing to the agency, and I can't see on my screen, so I'm just going to quickly get mine out so I call it right, the agency pickup tab. So that's where your blue arrow is pointing to. So you will click on that, and then we're going to go to the next page. Okay, so this page, this agency that I've brought up has not picked up retail before, so you don't see anything under where receipts are found in the center. So we're going to go on to add new receipt. If you've been here for a while, you'll see that those add up quickly. But to the next screen, after we've hit add new receipt, now we see that there's a drop-down menu there for Walmart. So they're partnered with Walmart. If you clicked on the arrow beside their name, there may be other agencies listed there as well. But let's say we're going to report for Walmart today. And so then I would just slide over to the date, and from the calendar, I would choose the date that I picked up. So if it were last week, I might choose May 5th for Cinco de Mayo, click that in, and then over to the blue arrow where we're going to click continue. And the next page, there you go. These are all the categories in which we're reporting. So if I've been to Walmart and I've picked up a couple totes of bread, for instance, I'm going to weigh those on one of the scales that we've provided with you. I'm going to weigh those. I'm going to total the weight. I'm going to put that under the quantity section, which is blank now. And then I might scroll down and see, well, I picked up some produce. I'm going to weigh those containers of produce all together. We don't have to separate apples from lettuce. We're going to put the total pounds under quantity. And maybe that's all I've received that day. And then I just go to process receipt and click. And that's it. So for those of you who have not partnered with yet for retail in your area, this is how easy it is. We establish that relationship. You go on to meet with that manager, store clerks. You pick up those and bring them back to your pantry, weigh them, and add them into Primarius. And I would just say that best practice probably is to go ahead and enter those pounds the day you pick up, or at least once a week if you're picking up once or twice a week. I know that the end of the month comes quickly, and for some of you who are picking up a lot, it's a lot to enter at the very end. And just for your accuracy and for the stress alone, I would suggest that you enter once a week. So I look forward to getting out and meeting more of you. We know that we've got some convenience stores possibly coming on, other local grocers that we're expanding. So I'm happy to reach out and I'm happy to answer questions. If you have someone in your area you'd like me to talk to, that's what I'm here for. You can contact me from our main website, from your RPC. My phone number is listed. I'm happy to get together and chat. And I look forward to growing this program together. Thanks for your time today.
Good afternoon. I'm Emily Trivio with Fairway. I handle our corporate outreach and communication. I'm really excited to be here today. Want to thank, my fellow presenters and the Food Bank of Iowa for allowing me to be here. I'm just really excited to speak with you about Fairway and how we handle food rescue. So we'll go to the next slide. So fun fact, Fairway has just a long history of conservation, recycling, reusing our resources. We always want to be a good steward. And dating back to 1955, actually, we used to build tunnels underneath of our stores. We would reclaim the heat created by freezer and cooling units and then circulate those back to heat our stores. So just a little fun fact, and we no longer do that with the technologies available to us today, but some of your older stores, those capabilities are still there. Fairway recycles so many items, beyond being good stewards of food waste and rescue. So you can see that here, everything from plastic to cardboard, paper, and of course pallets. We'll go to the next slide. So I apologize, I'm having a little trouble seeing my slides, so I'm going to go to my prints. So Fairway has conducted food rescue from our warehouse for more than 20 years. That's actually probably a pretty conservative number, but from what I could gather from our warehouse support, they have fond memories of pulling product and getting it into the hands of those that need it most. So we've been doing that work for some time. Additionally, our store managers, we're always so proud of our store staff. They are the best stewards of their community, really like to get involved. And so in many cases, store managers handled food rescue locally and worked with their pantry partners. And where we've been able to, we try to honor those existing relationships as we move forward into a more formal program. So in 2017, we saw the benefit to just formalizing the program a little bit more. Not only does this help us tell our story, but it helps from a tax write-off standpoint as well. And so we started a pilot program in our Des Moines Metro stores. We try to keep it simple and safe, and I think it's worked to our advantage. So we were able to roll that out to all of our stores in 2018, and you'll see on the next slide that more than 85% of our stores currently conduct retail food rescue. I would say that number is not quite at 100% for a couple of reasons. The first being that COVID had an adverse impact for some of our pantry partners, unfortunately, and maybe their mission or their capacity has changed. And so we've been working to pivot our stores to different partners where there's a great fit. Additionally, I think as we get out into rural areas, we'll get into the success of what makes our program great. But I think as we get out into rural areas, the consistency, the volunteers that pick up, maybe aren't as strong as we would see in a more metro or urban location. And so we continually to work hard on getting those partners placed with our stores so that we can be continuous stewards of our good resources and also just continue to grow the program. So in the last year, we've donated over 1.1 million pounds annually. And this is a wonderful story to tell. So, and there are some secondary benefits to Fairway in doing retail food rescue. It has allowed us to be a little bit smarter about buying habits. If we're continuously way over in one category, we're able to adjust where necessary. It helps us save on waste removal. We're able to identify food before it becomes waste and move it into the hands of those that need it most. And I think, truthfully, that's the best benefit of this program. But also, I think it's just helped us and our store managers have great community partnerships. Those managers live, work, and play in their communities. And so we want to keep them plugged in, aware of your needs, aware of their local community's needs. Next slide, please. So here's a little bit about our food rescue program. Again, we've tried to keep it really simple. We've worked with all the different food banks in our soon-to-be 7-state region, which is quite frankly crazy with our continued growth. But it's been wonderful to work with the different Feeding America food banks. They help us partner on the front end, our store, if they don't already have an identified partner. If they do, we just work to button up the details and we all move forward. So a couple things that I provide to our stores is a food donation guide. This is just a short brief for our store managers on what they can and cannot give according to our legal and risk management teams. This is not the be-all, end-all, and we'll get into here shortly how you can help further educate our store managers. We have a food donation agreement that is executed between the store and the pantry partner that's picking up. Storage bins are able to be provided for our stores to keep that food separate from new product coming in. And then one thing that I think is probably unique to Fairway is that before food goes out, we do ring it up at the register. And the reason why Fairway does that is beyond the obvious intrinsic value of giving to a food bank. Our charitable giving is such that we aren't able to realize a tax write-off on a lot of the gifts we give. The only place we can is actually giving to a food organization like a food bank or a food pantry. And so we are careful to ring that up at the register so we can get that value from a tax perspective. We'll go to the next slide. Where I think Fairway has been really successful with our food pantry partners is, we're a flexible organization. We have stores that have bakeries, and sometimes those stores need pickup 3 times a week so that they can turn product as needed. But I think if we have consistency with pickup, whether that's 1, 2, 3 times a week, we have regular people that pick up, the relationships start to be formed. And I think that that's really important for that second bullet point. And that's the food life education. You all are the experts. Our managers are trained to look at an expiration date and then move product, right? So we all know that there's a lot longer shelf life on product than the expiration date. And so where you can help the managers, we have that quick fact sheet that I've provided, but where you can help them is continual education on what is still wholesome, what can still be used. And I think that comes from consistent, regular pickup. And quite frankly, I'll jump down a couple bullets. Great communication, right? That's what it comes down to. Now, what's really important to Fairway, while you may see us ring up, product going out the door at the register, that's really more from an internal perspective. From an external perspective, the regular and timely reporting of pounds is so important. Fairway does not release financial data. And so how I can tell our story, how I can help tell your story and the need that's there is just through the regular and timely reporting of pounds. I shared what our pounds are. That equates into a certain number of meals. And so that's the way I can help talk to folks about our great relationship. And so that's really important as a retail food partner on our side, so we can continue to tell this great story. And then, I think fostering of good relationships. We have teams that do an absolutely wonderful job. They are plugged in with their retail pantry partner. They have a good relationship, regular, consistent communication beyond just the retail food rescue. And so that's really paired well, I think, for both parties. When there are extraneous needs, or maybe there's a special fundraising event, that relationship is already there. And I think our managers have a great propensity to support their existing partners. And we'll go to the next slide. So this is really sort of next steps for me. We're going to continue to partner and pair those agencies with our stores and monitor that progress. Not all stores are created equal. We certainly have work to do so that we all look a little bit more similar from store to store and get up to that 100% mark. That is always has been my goal for the last several years. Once we have all of our stores on board, we have the potential to add additional items to that giving guide. And the reason why that is there is we have certain suppliers that dictate that we not donate food products for various reasons. And I think once we can tackle all those partnerships and have those in a good spot, we're able to move forward in contacting some of these suppliers to determine where, when, why, and how we can do a better job of moving that food to retail food rescue program. And then I think work to continuously grow relationships. I've touched on this, I think, throughout the presentation. And I'm excited for the work and the growth that I think that this relationship has. So that's me and my business card. And in case you ever want to reach out, you're always welcome. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you too to Food Bank of Iowa for inviting me to be part of this conference. My name is Danielle Lawson, and I am an account manager on the Food Industry Partnerships team at Feeding America. I've been with Feeding America for about 1 year. In fact, my 1 year anniversary was last week. And before that, for 9 years, I was the food resource manager at Second Harvest Food Bank of Southern Wisconsin. And my role there was very much like what Sonia is doing currently in her new role. So that's a little bit about kind of my background. And I'm working out of my home office in Madison, Wisconsin, and so I'm also kind of a neighbor. What I'd like to start off with today is just a great big thank you. Thank you to all of you for what you're doing every single day in your communities. I had the opportunity to listen this morning to the opening remarks by Michelle and Claire Babineau-Fontenot, the Feeding America CEO, and Claire articulated so beautifully our appreciation for what you all do, and how all of this food is being moved and getting to people in need, not through what I'm doing here in Madison at my desk, but from what you all are doing every day in your communities with picking up at these retail partners and serving your neighbors who are coming to you in need. And I am so very grateful to and honored to be working alongside you in this work. I'm going to talk a little bit today about the importance of that receipting and the reporting, and I couldn't have asked Emily to tee it up any better for me as she recently did on one of her previous slides. Um, I'm wondering if any of you are surprised to know that Retail Rescue is now the largest channel of donated food for the Feeding America network. In a new email that was going out today from our supply chain vice president, Erica Thiem. She's talking about some of the challenges in our work right now through supply chain and so many other distribution hurdles. But retail continues to be a bright spot, as she noted. It continues to have opportunity. It continues to be some of our most requested items are being rescued, and retail really continues to be that bright spot. It is 68% of all donations that were in 2021. That was from the retail and wholesale grocery streams. And if you think back to 2010, which might seem forever ago, but really wasn't that long, retail was 32% of total donations. I'm sure some of you remember when distributions at a food pantry were a lot of donated food drive items that were cans and boxes, and what that has changed to look like now in 2022. National retail partners, so those are the reporting data that I can see through Feeding America. So national retail donations at Food Bank of Iowa were up 39% in 2021 over 2020. And don't think that's because 2020 was a down year. 2020 was actually up even slightly over 2019, even during all of the uncertainty of the pandemic. And this is telling me how much the efficiencies that you all are doing and the relationships that you're building, how important those are, and that they continue to grow and open up new opportunities. Especially from retail, we're able to capture the nutritious options that your neighbors are looking for, and they're more important than ever. I'm sure you've had people come to your distributions hoping that you'll be able to provide them with fresh produce, meat, milk, and retail rescue is a great source of these items, with these categories making up over half of what is received on an annual basis. 34% of retail donations are fresh fruit and vegetables. Meat is another 12%, dairy products are another 6%. And again, these are national numbers as a whole on average. But think about how wonderful it is to be able to have access to those types of items that might otherwise be going to landfill. In fiscal 2021, for the first time ever, our network secured more than 2 billion pounds of food at retail. But a billion more pounds are still available by our calculations. And that's a big number, right? A billion. We heard Claire this morning talking about how many billions of meals have been provided, and it's hard to wrap our heads around that. And so you might be thinking, how are we going to capture a billion more pounds? How are we going to do this? Well, next slide, and we'll start talking about that. So continued growth of what we call agency enablement, which is where agency partners are picking up directly from retail partners. We have found that agency enablement often produces higher donation yields for many different reasons. And again, this is comparing to sort of the methods that are a little bit more old-fashioned, if you will, when the food bank was going to every store, bringing it back to the food bank, sorting it, and then making it available to your shop or on deliveries or things. But agency enablement is producing higher yields because one reason is that you're closer to the store. We have agencies who are just more nearby geographically. And with that, those agency volunteers are often known by store employees. There's a building of relationships at that level when you know the neighbor that's coming to pick up, when you consistently see that same person as a receiver when you're there receiving their donations. Agencies are often a little more nimble and they're positioned to pick up either more often or on short notice. And we're finding that frequency, the being able to pick up more often, is actually yielding larger donations as well. Fewer items are going past the allowable dates. It's more top of mind for the folks who are working at the store. They have more ingrained processes. So again, just being able to go more frequently or on short notice, all of those things are producing higher yields for agencies who are picking up. Something that's key to growing these partnerships, as we were recently talking about, is the timely and accurate donation receipting. And that's really what I'm here to talk about. Donation receipt information flows from partner agencies to the food bank, to Feeding America, and to the donor, but it doesn't stop there, as that information is often used for longer term sustainability and waste diversion goals by store leadership and boards of directors, for the IRS, for investors and customers and even suppliers, as it can help them look at what items are selling well at retail and some items that are not. So there is a wealth of information in those receipts. And if it feels like we are talking a lot about receipts all the time, it's because they are so very important. It is how we determine what volumes of resources are available in an area as well. So my team at Feeding America, the Food Industry Partnerships team, has certain national accounts that we work with to grow their donation programs and help them meet their waste goals. We send them monthly reports that have different tabs. It's a lot of spreadsheets, and they show donations by store. So within a company that maybe has, if you can imagine, 1,000 stores, we see that information by store location, By food bank, it rolls up under the food bank for each store. We even go down to category information so we can see, for example, how much was donated in those categories of produce, meat, dairy, bakery, non-food, all of those items. And there is even a tab for zero donations. It's one that we do want to keep continuing to improve. We want fewer and fewer of those there. It could be for any number of reasons, but the one that we would hope is never happening is if they are receiving a partnership pickup, that it's because those pounds aren't being recorded. There are some very legitimate reasons that they would be zeros, but if it's just because the pounds are missing, that's one we really want to try to eliminate that as a possibility. One of my accounts, I work with Costco, they have this report going to around 60 different people. And it doesn't just go into their inbox and sit there. They do look at it, and I do receive emails back with questions. They're asking really good questions, and they're looking at the data, and they're digesting, and they're looking for ways to continue to improve their program. And so I can tell you that that's just one account, and that is a true story. Next slide, please. So identifying, weighing, and reporting the food received is a small act for the amount of generosity that donation partners provide. While reporting can seem like one of those tasks that it does always sort of wait till the end of the month or end of the week, it does help our donation partners at the corporate level, and it's requested and necessary for good stewardship. One of the areas that's so important is it helps these stores understand their performance. And that can mean a bunch of different things, and I'll talk a little bit about that. One of those is allowing our partners to measure the success of their donation program and to help them optimize their efforts. It makes it easier to see where new opportunities are, for example, in particular stores or certain departments or even categories, as far as if those numbers are comparatively low to where they had been historically or comparatively lower that to another location in their area. So those are all ways that we look at those numbers by store or department or category. Just share a story I can tell you looking at by category. I can see, for example, if there's been maybe a new department manager that isn't as familiar with the donation process. And as soon as we jump in and talk about any questions that they might have, then I see those numbers coming up every month. So it's just a way, even at the store level, to see those improvements and those opportunities. That is another reason, if I may put a plug in as well, when you are doing the receiptings, I think sometimes it can be tempting to lump it into a general category or a mix category, but we have so many partners who are interested in knowing the donations by category, understanding which departments and which categories are being donated to their goals. And I will say it is definitely okay to share donation comparisons within the same company. I wouldn't take a donation report from one retailer and show it to another retailer and compare them. But it is absolutely okay within the same company to talk about their goals, talk about, especially if they're in the same district or region, to be able to share those informations. Many store or department managers are very competitive and they might be motivated by wanting to donate at least as much as the stores in their region or their district. And even they're also motivated to do more than their own store maybe did the month before or the year before, especially maybe if they are a newer store director or store manager. They want to continue to improve on those numbers. They're very number oriented. Store managers might also be evaluated on their waste costs. So having donation data could be a tool for improving that. If their leadership is watching those numbers, and again, coming back to ask them about their waste costs, they can talk about what improvements they've made with the donation program, which helps offset those waste costs. On this slide, it might be a little small, but on the right side, you can see an article and some examples, including a photo using Target as an example. Their stores are evaluated on donation performance, and they have a ton of benchmarks that they are required to meet. Stores and headquarters office, corporate office, will reach out to food banks and ask about donations if they're missing. And they do follow up on any of those blank numbers. I want to read just a little bit of a quote from the paragraph on the far right, and this is from their CEO, from Target's CEO. It says, historically, our waste minimization team performs waste stream audits to understand what is being sent to landfills and sets annual diversion targets. Target uses these audits and other data to raise awareness and drive improvements through donations, organics, recycling, and trash programs. And he continues on, but that was really the most important part that I wanted to mention about that they do look at that data. The next bullet point is the validation section, and it's some retailers capture donations in units or in cost, and some do use pounds, but having our data gives them a cross-reference to confirm that our records are matching or close. So having those consistent receipt reports gives them a double check. It can help identify where we're having reporting glitches, which does happen, especially if receipting happens regularly and then abruptly stops, or, for example, a new location that maybe isn't set up in our system correctly for some reason. We have absolutely identified those by missing reporting. And I wanted to assure you, if anyone has ever thought that it causes double receipting when you receipt information to the food bank and the food bank to Feeding America, all of those pounds flow upward and it is not double receipted. There is another aspect that's important about confirmation, and it doesn't happen very often, I'm sure, and it is unusual, but I will say that, for example, I am currently working with a convenience store chain that you may be familiar with that is being audited by the IRS, and they're having to go back to food banks and ask them for receipt reporting from 2020 on letterhead as corroboration for their own records. So it's very important in that aspect that the record keeping is accurate and that it coincides with what the donor has tracked as well. I think one of the most important areas of importance for receipting is the impact. And we've talked about this a little bit today already, that it helps to tell that story of the need in the community and what our partners are doing. And again, that's part of that stewardship responsibility. Most companies do publish a corporate sustainability report. You might have heard it called a CSR or something similar to that. It might be on their website. And these are sort of a report card that their board and their customers are reviewing. These reports show progress toward public-facing commitments around reducing food waste, carbon footprints, and regeneration of natural resources. And donations are a big part of these goals, and it does help them see how they're doing against these goals. We can measure the results of pilot programs. We can see, for example, if more frequent pickups yield more donations overall. We have so many wonderful new programs and new opportunities, and the best way to see what's working quickly is to look at those donation receipts and to see what that impact is. It also helps us see progress toward nutrition goals based on those categories. Many food banks do track percentages of categories of what we consider foods to encourage or items that are more nutritious. And that in turn can often help provide data for grant applications and other opportunities for funding or additional donation programs. So to be able to see that nutrition data based on your receipts is another really important piece of it. And I wanted to mention that if you do ever miss a cutoff date for receipting, please still send in those receipts. I know that Sonia will probably want you to have things in by a certain date, but unless it's the very end of a fiscal year, I would try to put in a plug to say don't just disregard it, even if it's a little late. We would still like to have the information. And finally, I wanted to mention about compliance. Iowa does have legislation that offers tax credits for donations to food banks, which is wonderful, but it is still voluntary. And I'm noting that some states do have organic waste recycling and reduction laws that require wholesome food to be donated. I think we'll start to see more legislation like this with California and New York already having these regulations and laws in place. So the national retailers are starting to put processes in place, and they're starting to pay more attention to this, and they will be building those into their processes to account for some of these requirements that have already begun. So that's all I have for you today, and I know I will be available for questions as well, but thank you again for all of your work and for having me today.
Well, thank you all for the wonderful presentations and the great information. It's such an important topic and will remain so as we move forward in the days ahead. Looking to see if there are any questions. Let's see, a couple of comments up there. And one of them is it's a comment about wanting to see how many pounds they've ordered throughout the year. And we can absolutely do that for you. Just reach out to your RPC if you want to know what your orders look like from year to year. There's also great information in your Primarius account that you can log into. Right above the green order entry button is a My Agency button, and it'll give you some great data there too for your own agency. But certainly reach out to your RPC and you can get the exact number of pounds you've ordered throughout the year. So just wanted to address that comment. And any other, please just type any questions you might have into that chat box. We have heard from our time on the road and just our partners speaking with us, a few, comments, questions through the year too. So I might throw that out there as something that we've heard, kind of time and time again in some of our smaller rural partners. They're saying, gosh, there just aren't a lot of retailers. There are some towns that don't have a grocery store. So we certainly are watching for any activity that comes, any new stores, any new interest in retailers in your location. We know that there are some areas that have just a ton of retailers to choose from who are active. And then there are some of those smaller communities. But as things are built and there's a recognition that folks in those areas will, keep a store, will make a store successful and utilize that grocer or retail or convenience store, we definitely will work to get you paired. So as you live in those communities, and we travel to all your communities, but we're not in them every day, and we don't have our ear to the ground like you do right there in your own cities. Let us know if you know something's coming up. We can definitely hit the ground running as those retail relationships, if there's a new store in your area or there's a new manager who might be open to it where previously there had been maybe a little bit of hesitation. So we can definitely improve any situation with any retailer that's currently in your area, or as they come about, we can certainly pair partners with them. So don't be discouraged if you don't have a current retailer right now. We're happy to work with those as they come up. Let's see if there's any other questions. There are some long time retail donation pickups that we're seeing with our partners. They're saying, we're just not seeing those specialty items. We're not seeing, there's certain, donations categories that have gone down. And, there's been a lot of communication around supply chain. One of the, you know, situations that has happened over the course of COVID is, if there's a company that made 22 different varieties of beans, they maybe shored up production and they only do a dozen, and they don't do specialty labeling or holiday labeling or test a few flavors out that they normally would have done because they've skinnied down their production to kind of their bread and butter. And we've heard from some that that's likely not to revert back, where they're not going to have the 22 varieties of beans, they'll have 12. And so that does affect some of those donations. So there might be some of that is ongoing. Do any of our panelists have anything they'd like to add, or any questions they often hear that they'd like to address that maybe the wider audience would be really interested in? If not, and certainly if you think of something afterwards, if any of our attendees do, they can certainly put it in the chat. We'll always reach back out to our speakers and get those answers resolved for them, and happily answer questions if they come up even later or tomorrow. If you shoot us an email that you thought of a question, we're happy to respond to those. So I'll just wrap this session up. Let's give a big round of applause for Danielle, Emily, and Sonia. Thank you so much for the information on food rescue and how this is such an important topic in so many different planes. You just help us really to stay nimble and be able to work through these supply chain and inflation issues as we, have this great relationship with our partners being agency enabled for those pickups. We're going to take a quick break. We'll still stick with our schedule. Our agenda has the next session starting at 1:50. So that looks like it's about a 15, 17-minute break. So we'll meet you back here for the session on nutrition ranking at 1:50. Thank you.